Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today we are going to take a look at how I restructured or really reimagined my Nicoletta Ceccoli Tarot. So when I first got the Nicoletta Ceccoli, I did not really resonate with a lot of the images in the positions that they were in. It didn't mean that I didn't necessarily resonate with the images. It's just that the artwork didn't really portray my idea of what that card should visually represent. In order to make it work a little bit better and align more in tune with how I read tarot, I just went ahead and restructured it. So we'll talk a little bit about that process. So to begin with, the first thing that I did was to cut all the borders off of the card. So all of the cards have had their titles removed, which of course allows me to rearrange them in the order in which I see fit. So once I did that, I did also reback them in black contact paper to make them a bit more durable. And I just like the look of the black with the card images. Not that there was anything wrong with the back before, I just really like this kind of black leathery look for this deck. And I also edged it and I gave it this really sort of worn kind of grungy look, which I think really matches the feel of the deck and the feel of the artwork. I intentionally let some of the edging splatter over the sides and onto the card fronts, again to give it that grungy look, which was just kind of the look that I was after. Now, once I did that and I had gotten the deck free from all of its borders, basically what I did was I went through the deck card by card, or I should say position by position. So I started with the Fool and I worked my way through first the majors because I didn't move a ton of the majors around. There are only a couple of card shifts in the majors. The majority of the restructuring comes in the minors. But for the majors, I just went through position by position and I found images that visually represented that position to me or represented the energy of that archetype or that arcana. And I just added sticky notes. I made little sticky flags for every card, all 78 cards, and I did them color-coded just to make it easier for myself. I did purple for the majors, I did blue for the cups, I did yellow for the swords, I did pink for the wands, and green for the pentacles. And this just made it easier for me to visually rework the deck. And I also made it so that I didn't have to write like 4 of pentacles. I could just write the 4. It's on a green flag. I know that it's a pentacle. So just a little bit of a time saver, a little bit to make it a little easier for me. So I went through and I found cards that for me represented the energy of all of the majors. When it came to the minors, I went through card by card, number by number, and I first thought about what does that suit mean to me and what does that number mean to me, because I read tarot a little bit more skewed to a numerological association than I do, say, a Rider-Waite-Smith structure. That's just how I read tarot, and one of the reasons why this deck maybe didn't quite resonate so much in alignment with the way that I read, but now it does because I've restructured it to work for me. So basically I went through and I thought about, I started with the Ace of Cups and I went through and I thought about what that card means to me. I took the deck that was free from all of its borders and titles, and I had no tags on it at this point, and I just went through and looked through the images until I found one that spoke to me of that card's energy. I pulled it out, I put the little associated flag on it, and then moved on to the next one. Now, this process worked really well when you're starting out because you have, once the majors were done, I had, the 56 minors to pull from. So the first few suits, the cups and the swords, were quite easy because I had a lot of imagery to pull from and to look through. Once I had pulled out, 2 of the suits, then I was left with a little bit more of a challenge in my wands, trying to find images that really related. And when it came down to the Pentacles, now all I had left was 14 cards. Now, most of the cards that I had pulled, that I had left, were cards that spoke to me of Pentacle energy, so that was a little bit easier. It was just down to a couple of cards that caused me some trouble, and we'll talk about those when we get to them. But really, for the most part, the way I had pulled cards, I had left the kind of earthy, pentacle-y energy cards on the table anyway, because to me, as soon as I saw them, they spoke of that pentacle earth energy, so I did not pull them into the other suits. But when you get down to the last few cards, it's a bit more difficult to find a home for them, and you kind of, once you get down to like your 1 or 2 cards, you're kind of only left with 1 or 2 positions, and that's kind of where they have to go. I did end up actually pulling 1 card out and putting a new card in that I had created, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But let's go ahead and dig into this restructuring so that you can see how I have restructured it. And I will talk about why I pulled different cards in, why I left certain cards out, why I changed, why I changed some of the positions. And all of this that I did in my Nicoletta junk journal. So everything that you see here will be pulled out of there. So some of what you may find here may not resonate with your way of reading, and I encourage you to use what does and to set aside what doesn't align with your understanding. And to make things easier for you, I have also included a download. You can find it in the description box below. So let's go ahead and jump in, and we are going to start with the Fool, and we are going to flip through my journal here and talk about each of the cards in turn. So holding on to her original position of card 0 of the Major Arcana, the Fool remains ready to begin on this new adventure. She will follow her own path, marching to the beat of her own drum. The Magician reveals her true face beneath the mask. To transform ourselves on the Fool's journey, we must remove the mask and step into our true nature. Here we have the beautiful Ice Princess embodying our High Priestess. She is the bridge between the worlds, what the subconscious knows and the soul self must remember. Our little Queen of Creation holds her position as the Empress, a reminder of the interconnected web that binds us. Disappointed little soldier on a rocking horse that goes nowhere. He reminds us that while stability is dependable and the rhythm of the familiar may be comfortable, you won't get anywhere unless you get off your rocker. Traditionally the card of institutions and teaching, this Hierophant remains ever vigilant as Arcana 5, while the Little White Book reminds you to be selective with your spiritual teachers and look beyond the trappings of religion to seek the truth. This is one of the few cards in the deck that I feel the Little White Book sums up perfectly. This, beautiful lovers, is all things intertwined. It is the feminine and the masculine, the awakened self and the shadow self, deeply rooted and connected. Here we find our first deviation in the Major Arcana. Like the Emperor before her, the cowgirl is the master of her domain, but where he is stagnant, she is in motion. Formerly, our Knight of Cups, she now finds her place as the Chariot. Here she will drive her little horse forward with the sheer force of her will. A master of self-discipline, our cowgirl is level-headed and in control of her passions and intellect. Our original Chariot, with its sweet and nurturing energy, did not portray the active, self-motivating energy that I wanted to see in Arcana 7. There is no sense of progress, ambition, or forward motion, where our new Chariot, portrayed as the cowgirl, is full of that dynamic energy more suited to this card of momentum. She is conscious energy in action, a reminder that we can do anything we put our mind to. Our Two of Swords, the little tightrope walker, takes the place of our original Justice as a visual reminder that life is a balancing act and we must step mindfully. While I like the imagery, the original Arcana 8 spoke more of a tower energy to me than that of Justice. It rather lacked the sense of balancing the scales, of cutting through the truth of your actions. In our reassigned Justice, we get that teeter-totter energy of the karmic balancing act. With her home upon her back, the sleepwalker is always connected to her inner sanctuary. This little hermit reminds us that we don't need to seek inner light or higher knowledge outside of ourselves. We can be our own teachers, for the inner knowing that speaks from our soul is the source of our greatest wisdom. The wheel often signifies the perpetual change in life, be it our own growth or the shift of the seasons. This little magician's assistant pictured here reminds us that while we may not be able to keep the wheel from turning, we can control our response to it. We find the Five of Cups in lieu of our original Arcana 11, for no other card in the deck captures the essence of inner strength for me than this beautiful image. We see here two sides of the same whole, feminine and masculine, animal and human, embracing the other side of their being. It is through this inner strength that we can overcome any obstacle, animal power and human spirit working together in union. The original artwork featuring the princess and the prey really did not resonate with how I see strength. It is not an outward display of power and domination, but rather an inner discipline, tempered by patience and compassion. In the Nicoletta Tarot, Angie and Lena speak to being of two minds rather than one changing perspective. The Hanged One often asked us to look at things from a different perspective. Here we are not turning our viewpoint on its head, but rather adding a new line of thinking. The original Death card in the Nicoletta is one of my favorites, a perfect storybook depiction of transition, for we know that in the tale, this death is not Snow White's end, but the start of her new beginning. Here we see Daphne trusting her subconscious self, the guidance of her inner voice, to take her where she needs to be. Temperance is rather like a lucid slumber, a balance between the earthly experience and the spiritual expansion. In this Devil card, we may find many interpretations and many trigger warnings. The little white book carries a message to not be blinded by temptations. But for me, this card speaks of surrendering to the shadow self and learning its lessons. In this more traditional imagery for the tower, we see blocks stacked on top of each other to form our structure. Though perhaps a bit off kilter, our little queen knows that what she stands upon is stable. When we build our world on the solid foundation of our inner self and our core values, we can weather the storm we see brewing in the distance. Whenever I see this star card, it always brings to mind the childlike empress from the never-ending story. She was the shining light of hope for all of Fantasia, but without a name, even she couldn't stop the nothing. This card reminds us to give a name to our hopes and dreams. When we name something, we claim it and we call it our own. Often called the card of illusion or intuition, the moon reflects back to us our true selves that we so often bury beneath the surface. Here we find Lenore, rising from the waters of the subconscious to manifest her soul's voice in the conscious world. It reminds us to swim within the innate wisdom that comes from our dreams and intuition, for they hold the teachings of your inner self and the higher cosmic knowledge. Swollen with the sweetness of life and the joy of connectedness, this beautiful queen bee symbolizes the warm and abundant energy of the sun card. As she nurtures and cares for her little bee family, she reminds us that being a part of something bigger than ourselves can be the most fulfilling. Sitting in for judgment, we find the Ace of Wands, which retreats into quiet introspection. She follows the guidance of her own inner voice and takes the counsel of the cosmic collective around her. While the original artwork with its blooming rose and labyrinth certainly hints to a traditional interpretation of spiritual awakening, I find the quiet energy of this card to resonate more soundly with an inner calling. In the World card, we find a girl in a glass globe, contained within her own creation. A bit of a deviation from the traditional imagery we normally see. Here, I find the reaffirming of a life you have manifested in accordance with your soul's design, even if you weren't aware of it. As we move into the minors, we will find the majority of the cards have been repositioned. Using my core foundation as the building blocks and then allowing my intuition to guide me, I went through each card number by number until I found an image that resonated. In the Ace of Cups, we find Olympia as the embodiment of self-love, representing the root essence of the cups. Our Two of Wands finds its new home as the Two of Cups in the suit of emotions, for it takes us to that next stage of honest acceptance. While the original imagery for the Two of Cups certainly works well as a depiction of relationship and unity, the entwined mirror image of the girl illustrates the other side of the ace, the two faces of self-love. The mermaids in the Three of Cups maintain their original position, capturing the joy of community we traditionally find in this card. As we grow into the three, we begin to understand that the waters of emotion can become our playground when we understand its fluid nature. In the Four of Cups, we find a little mermaid at home in her aquarium. While others may see discontent or isolation, a nod to the traditional associations of boredom, I see in her the stability we find when our emotional state is self-governed. Where once this sad little fairy spoke of sorrow of the Three of Swords, she now finds her home in the suit of emotion. She is a victim to her own sadness, unable to release herself from the feelings that hold her hostage. Our original Five of Cups, which had been moved to strength, while beautiful and underpinned with emotion, did not capture the disruptive energy I associate to the Fives. As the suit of emotions and the number of instability, the Five of Cups is at its root the card of emotional upheaval. Borrowed once again from the suit of Swords, this float along the murky waters perfectly illustrates moving on from emotional wounds. While our original Six of Cups speaks to the more traditional interpretation of nostalgia and memories, it lacked the feeling of moving forward through emotional waters. After the disruption of the Five, we have transcended our victim narrative through an emotional death depicted here in our new Six. Little Alice in Wonderland with so many choices. That is the first thought that comes to mind when people often see this Seven. A message better suited for the swords, in my opinion. So in this card, I find a deeper understanding of our emotional lessons. The rabbits in their hole represent all of our past growth and experiences, the progress we have made through life's emotional whack-a-mole. Little Alice here is not looking at the holes behind her, but rather focused on the single rabbit before her. She is sitting with her current feelings in an effort to understand it. Shifting Arcana, Rose Red has gone from Judgment to the Eight of Cups, symbolic of our ability to navigate our emotional labyrinth. As eights are the number of solid structure and mastery, I found this new image to embody the very energy of emotional stabilization. In our original Eight of Cups, we are asked not to cling to resentments, but to set them free in order to make progress. While this message certainly resonates with a more Golden Dawn interpretation, the original artwork lacked a nod to the stable nature of the Eight. In this new assignment, the woman has grown in the midst of her labyrinth, not lost inside it, but centered within it. Another borrowing from the suit of Swords, this Five has been reborn as our reflective Knight of Cups. Sometimes called the Wish card, the Nine of Cups is traditionally attributed to contentment and pleasure, a message we see clearly reflected in our original imagery in a bath of milk and honey. Instead, I have chosen a bit of a harsher interpretation with the slaying of the vegetable. We have reached the Nine, the place of amplification where dynamic emotions move through a final push to completion. This vegetable is symbolic of helplessly surrendering to our emotions. When we have traversed the 8 stages of growth, and in the 9th we have slayed unhealthy emotional behaviors. Our former Queen of Wands, Sherry, has been taken from her throne and brought into the emotional realm as the Ten of Cups. The Tens are the culmination of their suit, the wholeness represented by the journey. In this card, we see a loving mother snuggling her baby. It is a card of sweetness, of soft moments and simple pleasures, the rebirth of our emotional being into the next growth cycle. In the original Ten of Cups, we see a nod to the journey, but it feels as if it's come to an end unexpectedly as the elephant reaches the edge of the table. In Sherry, we see a more cohesive picture, a culmination rather than an abrupt ending. The courts are an often debated and less often understood group of cards with layers and layers of meaning. For me, they represent the development of the suit and the movement of its energy. They are not people, but the personification of those elements. The pages are the foundation of the suit, grounded in earth energy. The Page of Cups represents the next stage in our emotional development, of moving beyond the tens to begin again at 11. This page, or knave as the Nicoletta Little White Book calls her, she is not submerged in the waters, but actually made of it. She is the personification of emotional study, of learning your own heart and understanding your feelings. The second former major to be brought down into the minors, what was once our strength card becomes our brave Knight of Cups. Knights are the activation of the suit, fueled by their fiery energy. The Princess and the Prey did not resonate with me as strength, but as the brave Knight of Cups, slaying emotional dragons, this is the picture of perfection. Active and engaged, the former Knight of Cups, who is better served as my chariot, lacked the emotional drive that we see in this new image. She is the personification of acting from the heart, of taking control of your emotions, and of course, of slaying those emotional dragons. The queens are the nurturing of the suit. ebbing and flowing with the energy of water. This beautiful queen personifies cultivating from the heart and nurturing your emotional well-being. The kings are the mastery of the suit, powered by the energy of air. She personifies the mastery of your feelings, of the ability to effectively navigate your emotional waters toward stability. The former Page of Pentacles embodies the potential of the open and liberated mind of the ace, an idea that was not visually represented in the original imagery. Instead, we find Adiaga, with her eyes closed and arms wide open, surrounded by butterflies who symbolize the fleeting nature but transformative power of our way of thinking. Our naughty Seven of Wands finds a new place as the second card in our sword suit, a representation of difficult times, making choices, or weighing our options. The card reminds us of the gravity and consequences of our decisions. While the image of the tightrope walker, who better served as my justice, depicts the notion of balance, we are missing that dual edge of choice and consequences. This card reminds us that our thoughts and beliefs shape more than just how we interact with the outside world, but the landscape of our own inner psyche. In contrast to a more traditional or Golden Dawn understanding of the Three of Swords, where heartbreak tends to be the leading keyword, I have chosen to place here the former Three of Pentacles. While our old Three of Swords certainly hints at that old favorite of sorrow and heartbreak, a card much better suited for the Five of Cups anyway, I sought a card that more closely reflected the numerological association. As swords are the suit of the mind and three's the number of growth, we find in this new image a more cohesive representation of the Three of Swords. Here we see the little blue caterpillar, the voice of inner knowing, offering her counsel and expanding her mind to consider many ways of thinking. Many of our pentacles have found new life in the suit of the mind. Here we find yet another, as the Eight of Pentacles holds space for the Four of Swords. Where we traditionally find an image of rest and recuperation, in which we certainly see here in this previous rendition, I have chosen to embrace the structural energy of the Four and showcase the building of thoughts and beliefs into new ways of thinking. What was before the card of nightmares as the Nine of Swords has come to play the role of our Five. Here we see the disruptive energy of limiting beliefs, fears, and illusion. While we can certainly see this idea reflected in our old card, the Five is a place of being in conflict, not the active resolution, which comes later in the numbers, that we see depicted in this original image. Our limiting beliefs and fears can be overwhelming, but like the giant rabbit in our new Five, it is nothing but empty stuffing. It reminds us that these thoughts that often keep us repeating unhealthy patterns are nothing more than ego's retelling of untrue stories. Although still in position 6, Pilgrimage, as the artwork is called, has shifted from the fiery suit of wands to our airy suit of swords. The sixes often represent a time of moving on, of important transitions. We can certainly see that movement depicted on our old card, but like the original three before her, it's overflowing with emotional energy better suited to the cups. Now we find the little queen on her bug, taking her leave and heading in a new direction. She has learned to let go of the limiting beliefs that keep her from moving forward. In the background, we see the white elephant, an animal that has earned a reputation as being a burdensome beast for being the ruin of its owners. This offers us a perfect symbol for the unhealthy thoughts that we must leave behind. Thief is most often a word that comes to mind whenever we find the Seven of Swords. In Nicoletta, we see this keyword depicted brilliantly, the little boy lurking around the corner, waiting to take what does not belong to him. He is the limiting beliefs we have fought so hard against in the Five and left behind in the Sixes. And here we are in the Sevens, and we see that ego will never stop trying. The battle against our own inner critic will always be a shadow at our backsides. We must guard against it, for it's a lesson that we will have to learn again and again through our long lifetime. In the Eight of Swords, we find yet another pentacle. Once the Four, the stability and structure has been doubled to create the foundation of a new way of thinking. Our former depiction of the Eight was focused on anxiety and suspicion, certainly not thoughts you want to have as the foundation for your mental realm. The castle in our new card is a mirror image. It's our core beliefs that have been building since birth. And here, while we see that they create the structure of our thinking, we can always turn them around to reflect our authentic way of being. Little Lucy, who was once our 8 of Swords, has become our 9. The 9s are the process of dynamic energy, and here we see thoughts amplified to drastic and often scary proportions. We find this same theme represented in our former 9 of Swords with our giant bunny, but this image reflects a fear outside ourselves, where Lucy's are all internal. This card is a reminder not to let your thoughts run away with you. It's easy to get swept up in our own inner narrative. One of my favorite images in the Nicoletta, Cheryl, who was once our 8 of Cups, has become the culmination and the expanding of our thinking as our 10 of Swords. Here we see all of her thoughts, the good and the bad, the beneficial and the burdensome, all habitating together within a single cage of which she has control of. Our former 10 of Swords shows a much more traditional depiction of something being slaughtered, as the physical brutality does not resonate with the mental or the airy energy that I associate with the suit of swords, or the culmination of the 10, this card fell short of having any sense of control over our emotional landscape. In our new image, we see both energies reflected, of being in control of our thoughts and of growing into new ways of thinking. Farfalla, as she is named, has embraced her expanding mind but is always willing to learn more. She is the personification of intellectual study, of learning your own mind, understanding your beliefs, and communicating with authenticity. Fueled by her fiery energy, this little knight charges forward, ready to explore this new way of thinking. She holds up her candy cane, ready to slay any of those limiting beliefs that might fly her way. She is the personification of acting from the mind, of taking control of your thoughts and steering them in the right direction. Here we find the 3 of Wands taking her place in the royal court as the new Queen of Swords. She holds in her hand one tiny bird, a single thought she will nurture and nourish to healthy fruition. Where our previous image shows that direct and sharp-edged nature of the sword, she lacked the nurturing essence so indicative of our queens. With our new queen, we can find a nod to that sharpness, not in tone, but in intellect, through the cunning fox that she has outwitted. But we still maintain that nurturing energy of the queen. She is the personification of nurturing from a place of understanding, of knowing your own mind and being smart in your applications. As a master wordsmith, the King of Swords speaks her truth with power, grace, and authority. She is writing letters, sending her thoughts and intentions out into the world to manifest her creations. She personifies the mastery of your thoughts, of the mental clarity that comes with knowing the state of your intellectual story. The image entitled Cuddles remains as our Ace of Wands. Here we see the soul exposed, bare, portrayed in its root essence. She is covered by the salamander, who symbolizes our inner fire, the passions and ambitions that will carry us to our soul's purpose. As the Ace, this card represents the beginning of this soulful journey. Our Wands 2 of Cups takes their place in the suit of Wands. The two girls embrace, their hair even braided together, symbolizing the union of the soul self with the physical self. Our former 2 of Wands does indeed mirror a union of self, but is focused more on outward enchantment or inner illusion rather than the authentic truth. In our new 2, we see not just a reflection, but a merging of self. In our reassigned 3 of Wands, the former 9 shows us a girl reading while a chameleon watches over her shoulder. Our original 3 of Wands speaks of loss and gains, a beautiful card, but again, more of an outer projection that doesn't track through our progress of the soul. She is immersed in her own story, but is she aware of the beast behind her, or is she simply ignoring it? This card asks us to be aware of when we are playing the chameleon and not being true to our nature. This deck's original justice has come away from the major arcana to embody the building of the soul self on a solid structure. In our previous 4 of Wands, we find a girl running through a lollipop forest, reminding us to move quickly through our present circumstances. But the 4s are not a swift number, and they are built to support and stabilize. Whereas the former is about movement, our new card becomes about stability. Georgina Tames the Dragon remains as our 5 of Wands and is a wonderful depiction of the disruptive energy of the 5s. Here we see Georgina soothing the savage beast with the apples she carries. We can think of this as taming our own wild nature. Here the beautiful Ava from the 6 of Cups has come to find a new home in the suit of Wands. High up in the tower, she is presented with the gift of the mirror. This mirror is symbolic of her intuition, a reflection of her inner voice. This is the vision she must carry, for it will lead her to her spiritual and soul purpose. In the previous Six of Wands, we are told that we are on top of the world now, that victory is ours, and yet she doesn't look very happy. Although that is certainly a traditional keyword association with this card, there is little triumph in this image. Instead, we look to the thoughtful new imagery that mirrors the progression of the soul and the confidence gained from knowing your soul's purpose. Our once Queen of Cups now stands in the Wands as a symbol of the challenges and perseverance we often find in the Seven. Our old Seven certainly speaks to the challenges associated with this wand and focuses more on atonement. There is as much pleasure and pain in discovering your passions and following your purpose, which we see here in our new Seven. This card reminds us that the journey will be bittersweet with moments of pleasure and moments of sadness. As a representation of the forward momentum of the soul, this former Ten of Pentacles serves much better here as the swift Eight of Wands. On our previous card, with its quiet energy and messages of light, doesn't quite capture the high energy of the quick-moving fire suit. In our new image, we find a girl leaping off the merry-go-round. She has learned her lessons and faced her challenges and ready to move on to the next stage of her journey. Dulce Amara, who once stood as our Ace of Swords, has come to represent the dynamic energy and resilience of our Nine of Wands. Our former Nine, again, shows a more slow-moving and passive energy not generally indicative of the fire suit. As with the Nines, we bring in the final process of pushing past our boundaries here in our new image. We have overcome our obstacles with the strength of our will, and now we emerge sticky with the messy of life, but able to enjoy the rewards of our journey. Our former Nine of Cups brings us to the completion of our numbered wands as the new 10. In our previous card, we are confronted with a situation that is oppressive and overwhelming. Although certainly very traditional, it does not capture the more numerological association of culmination and wholeness. Here we see a girl and her little friends bathing in a bowl of milk and honey. This scene symbolizes the warmth and comfort of slipping into our authentic self and our soul's purpose. Our very grounded Page of Wands, who was once called the Five of Pentacles, represents the next stage in our spiritual or soul development, of moving into a realm of deep connection. Where our original page offers a similar image and message, here we see a girl with birds in her hair, the whispers of her soul who guide her on her journey. She has opened herself up to them on a very soul level. She is the personification of spiritual or soul study, of learning your purpose and exploring your curiosity about who you are and where you come from. Our fiery knight has traveled from the Pentacles to bring her adventurous and sometimes rebellious nature to our Court of Wands. In stark contrast, we have our sweet old image, which does indeed echo the call to adventure, but the fiery energy of our new knight captures the passion and the peril of leaping into your soul's adventure. She is the personification of acting from the soul, of leading a life driven by passion and purpose. Our once Seven of Pentacles has been crowned our Queen of Wands as she stands strong and confident, both mother and protector. Again, we see a similar message in our former Queen, but without that pull of a soul connection, without that web she's weaving. In our new card, we find a self-actualized Queen, proud and confident. She is the personification of nurturing from a place of passion, of fueling your dreams and doing what it takes to nurture and protect them. Here we see the King let loose her powerful energy to protect the world she has cultivated. She personifies the mastery of your soul, of the clarity that comes with knowing who you are on a deep spiritual level. Uvo remains as our beautiful Ace of Pentacles. Hatching new life, she represents the birth of new experiences. In our Two of Pentacles, we see a disjointed doll juggling bits and bobs and buttons. Disconnected from her body, we are reminded not to lose our heads as we try to juggle life's many responsibilities. Our former Four of Swords settles into the earthy energy as our Three of Pentacles. Often a card of teamwork and collaboration, we see in this image a similar message to that of our original, with fish and frog offering counsel as opposed to the blue caterpillar. In relation to manifesting our world, we find in this new image a reminder to let others help us along our journey. The once Ten of Wands, entitled Nightwalk, brings stability and structure to the Four of Pentacles. In our previous image, we see the disillusion of material gain. In contrast to this, or the miser we often find in this position, In our new image, we see the energy of the 4 represented numerologically as building stable structures and putting good use to your resources. The 5 of Pentacles has become the elephant's journey, formerly our 10 of Cups. It is the symbol of the instability and disruption along that journey. Where our former shows a more contemplative and soulful expression, our new image brings about that unexpected challenge. Here we see they have reached the end of the road, the physical barrier on their journey. However it is they found themselves here, they must find a way to overcome it if they want to move forward. In the 6 of Pentacles, we find Lollipop Land that was once our 4 of Wands. This 6 shows us an image of harmony and balance, of cultivating a big bubblegum world that provides everything you need to grow and prosper. In our former 6 of Pentacles, we see a similar message reflected, one of having enough resources to share. In our new image, we find a forest of resources, plenty of lollipops for everyone. Our Queen of Swords finds herself a softer landing as the new 7 of Pentacles. Shifting back to our original card, we are reminded that excellence takes time and to hold true to your vision of what you will achieve. From this new perspective, in our reorganized artwork, we may also see this card as having your cake and eating it too. Our sustainable efforts have been rewarded, and now we can enjoy the fruits or cake of our labor. Flying through the candy forest, our former Knight of Wands brings transformative energy to the 8 of Pentacles. Traditionally the card of apprenticeship and hard work, we see instead the solid growth of manifesting your intentions into a tangible fruition. Our harsh 10 of Swords is transformed into the 9 of Pentacles. Here we see our characters re-examining the situation and perhaps contemplating how they all got here. In our previous 9 of Pentacles, we see a bit more of a traditional rendition, of enjoying the simple pleasures of home life, of finding your comfort zone. In this repurposed 9 of Pentacles, we are asked to reflect on where we are and how we got there. In all honesty, it was a bit harder to conform this artwork to my interpretation of the 9 of Pentacles. At the end of my restructuring, it was the only image that remained unclaimed and the only position left to fill. Although I can work with this card in this position, I have actually created a new card from the 9 of Pentacles that we will see here from Nicoletta Ceccoli's image entitled Ingenue. This image comes a bit closer to symbolizing not only the more traditional interpretation of the 9 of Pentacles in terms of abundance and self-sufficiency, but also in terms of a more grounded energy of the Pentacles and a reflection of the 9. So this card becomes my new 9 of Pentacles, and this card is no longer in my deck. With her 10 little mice on a string, our former 6 of Pentacles has moved up to the 10. In our original 10 of Pentacles, we see Mary getting off the go-round, reminding us that prosperity may come in unexpected ways. But the 10s are about culmination, about building into something, and in our new image, we find the manifestation of everything we have dreamed of brought into our material world. Our bountiful and beautiful Knight of Wands has grown into our Page of Pentacles. With a similar energy to our previous page, she represents the next stage in our tangible development of manifesting our world in alignment with our true nature. She is the personification of tangible manifestation, of growing your own experiences. Once the card of the Chariot, this sweet queen now finds herself a new role as the Knight of Pentacles. Softer and gentler than the mischievous original knight, she is ready to set out unhurried and steady into the next adventure. She is the personification of acting with patience and purpose, of taking the slow and steady road along life's journey. Our once Knight of Pentacles has been crowned a new queen. With an earthier energy than the original queen, she has found her place in the world and is quite comfortable within it. She is the personification of nurturing from a place of abundance, of appreciating life and enjoying its slow and simple pleasures. And finally, with a hint of Taurus energy, we have our King of Pentacles, who masters her world with grace, strength, and sure-footedness. She personifies the mastery of your tangible realm, of the clarity that comes with being grounded in your own reality. So thank you for joining me on this restructuring or reimagining of my Nicoletta Ceccoli Tarot. I hope that you enjoyed this journey and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.